High FM, 101.9 megahertz of life.
The conflict between the United States and Iran is increasingly becoming an economic battle as much as it is a military one. At the center of that confrontation is the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important energy choke points. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says that the waterway will remain closed until the U.S. meets a series of demands, while President Donald Trump says Washington is taking a more restrained approach and allowing economic pressure on Iran to do the work. To help us understand the economic dimensions of this crisis, we are joined by David May. He's a research manager, research analyst at the Foundations for Defense of Democracy, specializing in economic warfare. David, a very good morning / good evening to you. Hope you are well.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Great pleasure. It is fascinating because obviously every war, and it's naive to suggest that wars are not about economics. Every war is greatly influenced by economic factors. But here it seems to be almost simplistic in the economic focus. It's really about energy, about allowing the world to receive much needed oil. How much of an impact and how important is this aspect of this confrontation?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's a key part of the war that we're seeing. Ultimately the money, especially the money that's going to Iran, the most important aspect is to limit that so that Iran can't continue to devote it toward its nuclear program, and also so they can't continue to fund its proxies and its adventurism throughout the region. And so at the very least, the war and the broader war since October 7th has been able to push back against Iran's adventurism and its military ambitions. One after one, its proxies have been picked off by Israel with U.S. support. But right now with the Strait of Hormuz, this is something that should have been foreseen. And if maybe, I think the most likely explanation is that the Trump administration thought that the war would be over swiftly, and so we wouldn't get to this Strait of Hormuz standoff. But as it stands, if Iran is able to achieve to gather an advantage from this, to charge tolls or other types of service fees for using an international waterway in violation of the oldest law in international law, which is the law of the sea, then that'll be a huge setback both for international order, but also for allowing Iran to benefit economically from this situation.
What could Trump or the administration have done differently in going into this war, assuming that they didn't anticipate the significance of the strait?
I mean, one thing that's ultimately a limiting factor is that the Trump administration had to maintain secrecy over the actions. And so based on the secrecy, the Trump administration didn't try to build an international coalition. And so right now it's basically the United States and Israel going at it alone. And even though the rest of the world is suffering, they don't seem to be willing or able to lend a hand to try to pacify and make the Strait of Hormuz an international waterway to continue to serve the international body. And so if an international coalition was able to arise to, at the very least, come together to protect the free passage of ships through that strait, that would be one thing. But the war has not been sold to an international audience, and they're not forthcoming with help either.
So what are the ways that this does play out? What are the options in front of us here?
I mean, right now the Iranian regime is proving to be very resilient and able to withstand U.S. pressure. But I think ultimately what we're not seeing as much is the cracks within the regime, the cracks between the IRGC, which is the military that runs the show, versus the office of the supreme leader, which is increasingly sidelined and less powerful than it was. And so the question is, will this force some type of moderate force within the IRGC to come to the fore? Will someone in the IRGC decide that it's in their best interest to try to come to a negotiated solution? And then ultimately, it's up to the Americans to negotiate that solution from a position of power and not to give concessions needlessly that it has done in the past.
A concern for that I have, and I hate to be negative so early on a Monday morning, but even if there's a significant win over Iran and the regime, there's a great likelihood, I would think, that guerrilla warfare would continue. It's not difficult really to attack civilian ships in a very small area even after this war is over, effectively making it impossible anyway. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, exactly. Based on the terrain, based on the close proximity of those ships, the fact remains that if Iran stays in power and the regime is there on the coast, they're going to be able to fire shots at American ships and international ships. So the key is to have a powerful enough regime that is able to, in Iran, that's able to control that territory, and one that can be affected by external pressure. We have to be able to threaten them with whatever means we can to get them to not engage in that kind of piracy that is more indicative of a rogue regime than an international actor. And so ultimately, it's just being able to apply pressure to the center in Tehran to get them not to engage in that kind of activity.
From everything we've read, there's undoubtedly also a focus on alternatives to the Strait, given that Iran could also only have a limited amount of time to exercise this advantage. That is, until alternatives are sorted out. How long will that take, and how viable are they?
Yeah, I'm not a great expert on the viability of those plans, but I've heard that they will be years in the making to try to create some type of pipeline that would avoid the sections of the Red Sea that, or sorry, of the waterway over there that would go through Iran's and near Iran's territory, and so it would take years to get that done. But it definitely, based on based on the volatility of the region and just how the international economy can be brought to its knees from a rogue actor, I think the need has been proven, and then it's just going to come up to the feasibility of plans to either create some type of canal or a pipeline that would bisect the Arabian Gulf.
Where are we in terms of the current negotiation? Because we're not really seeing much information forthcoming.
Yeah, so we had the ceasefire, and then the ceasefire collapsed under the weight of Iranian violations, and then there was about 2 weeks of fighting, and then the Iranians they indicated that they would be willing to come back to the negotiation table in earnest, and that they would be actually willing to make some type of concessions. And then right when they did that, they then attacked and killed 3 American soldiers in Jordan. But right now, it seems that the hostilities have been cooled for now, with the hope of resuming negotiations. But it still remains this kind of holding pattern.
It's interesting because I'm looking at Times of Israel, and their headline this morning is, or one of the headlines is, Trump says U.S. low-keying Iran conflict, giving economic pressure time to work. And they're saying with inflation, insufficient funds to pay their own troops in Iran, this is obviously placing tremendous pressure on the regime. If they aren't paying their troops, I would imagine a lot of this begins to fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, Iran economically has been on the verge of collapse for years, and the
Mm,
pressure is
mm,
only increasing. And so we've seen a lot of that, especially in recent months. Some of the protests within Iran have been focused more on domestic issues rather than regime oppression. And so the economy is definitely one of them. We've seen slogans of them saying, "Get out of Palestine. We care more about what's going on here." And a lot of that has an economic element. There was other unions that have been uh, activated in opposition to the regime's policies. And so ultimately, we always seem like we're on the precipice of economic collapse, but ultimately the regime doesn't care about the existence, the thriving of the nation. They just care about the existence of their specific objectives. And so they really don't care about the rest of the country. And if they could survive, if they have to survive like a North Korea model where only a few elites have enough money to survive and the rest of the people are in poverty, I don't think that that would be the worst outcome for them.
absolutely fascinating. That is where we do need to leave it. Thank you, as always, David May, chatting to us from Washington. He is a senior research analyst at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, specializing in economic warfare.